The Armada waited in the cold of space. Thousands of alien ships floated in perfect formation, their hulls glinting in the light of a distant sun. Every vessel carried weapons that could tear apart planets, and every commander believed victory was certain. The coalition of species had gathered for one goal, only to break the humans once and for all. On the bridge of the flagship, the alien commander studied the glowing screens with calm pride. His species had fought many wars, but this was different. The coalition had united dozens of fleets, each sworn to erase the human colonies scattered across the frontier. The plan was simple: strike fast, strike strong, and leave nothing behind. The commander leaned back in his chair as reports came in. Patrol wings were sweeping the edges of the system. Scout ships confirmed the humans had no fleet in position. Everything suggested a smooth path forward. Yet, deep inside, some of the officers remembered the warning given by old veterans. The humans were not to be underestimated. They had survived wars that should have ended them. They had turned hopeless battles into victories. Still, the commander dismissed such thoughts. Legends were only stories. Sensors stretched across the void, their waves probing the dark between the stars. The silence of space pressed on the crew as they waited for confirmation of their dominance. Then a small sound broke the stillness. A sensor alarm chimed. A faint signal had appeared at the very edge of detection range. At first, no one moved. The crew assumed it was debris or the trace of some forgotten satellite. But the signal did not vanish. It grew sharper, stronger, and steadier. Technicians checked again and again, their hands shaking slightly as the data became clearer. It was not debris. It was not an error. It was a ship. The commander frowned and demanded an identification scan. Symbols and numbers filled the screen as the system analyzed the signal. The bridge grew quiet, every officer holding their breath. The final report blinked into view. It was human. The silence deepened. For a long moment, no one spoke. The commander read the words again, unwilling to believe. A human warship had been detected. Across the Armada, whispers spread from ship to ship. Messages leapt across comm channels as officers demanded confirmation. Was it truly human? Could it be a trick? Yet the sensors were certain. The profile matched records held for decades. The outline of the hull, the signature of the drive core, the rhythm of the power grid, it all screamed of human design. The commander's second officer lowered his voice. He reminded the bridge crew of the stories. Stories of human ships fighting against impossible odds. Stories of vessels that survived while surrounded by entire fleets. Stories of commanders who chose to ram enemy flagships rather than surrender. The aliens called these stories myths, but they all knew them. Every species had collected tales of human defiance. And now one of those feared ships had appeared before them. Still, the commander tried to hold firm. It is only one ship, he declared. We are an armada. Do not let fear take hold. One ship cannot stand against thousands. But even as he spoke, he noticed the eyes of his crew. Their hands hesitated over their controls. Their voices trembled when they answered his orders. Fear had already slipped into their hearts. Outside the flagship, the alien fleet shifted uneasily. Squadrons adjusted their formations, almost as if to give themselves space. Captains argued quietly with their superiors, asking if the humans might have more ships hidden nearby. What if this was only a scout for a larger force? What if the humans had planned this moment all along? In the depths of space, the human ship moved slowly into clearer range. Its hull reflected the light of the stars. Its weapons were powered, though silent. Its shield systems glowed faintly, strong and ready. The vessel did not fire a single shot, but its presence alone was enough to stir dread across the Armada. The alien commander clenched his jaw and forced his crew to remain calm. Yet he could not silence the growing tension. Every officer felt it. Every pilot sensed it. Something about this human ship carried more weight than all their numbers. The sensors pulsed again, sending updates through the fleet. The signal was no mistake. The human ship was real, and it was waiting. The alien commander stared at the screen. The battle had not yet begun, but he knew the mood of his armada had already shifted. The silence of space was no longer peaceful. It was heavy, filled with the fear of what was coming. The Watchers had become the watched. The human warship drifted at the edge of the system, a single silhouette against the stars. It did not move quickly, nor did it fire a weapon. Yet the entire alien armada felt its presence. Every ship captain in the coalition received the same message from their scanners. The data was undeniable. The shape, the energy signature, the patterns of power, it was human. On the bridge of the flagship, silence weighed on the crew. The commander leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the display. For the first time since the campaign began, doubt crept into his mind. The plan had been perfect, but the plan had not accounted for this. The science officer worked furiously at her console. She pulled old records, matching the readings against archives kept by the coalition. Within moments, the truth became clear. This was no ordinary vessel. The ship's design matched one of the rare classes that humans had built in small numbers. These ships were rumored to be legends among their kind, symbols of resistance and stubborn survival. The bridge grew colder as she read the confirmation aloud. A hush followed, broken only by the steady hum of the engines. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Some avoided looking at the screens altogether. The second officer spoke carefully. We should not underestimate what this means. Every fleet in the past that faced such a ship has told the same story. Engagements that should have been victories ended in disaster. Not because of technology alone, but because of the way humans fight. The commander's jaw tightened. He did not want to hear it, but he could not deny the nervous tremor in his crew's voices. He ordered the officers to focus on discipline. Yet he knew that words alone would not erase the weight of history pressing down on them. Across the fleet, the recognition spread. Commanders of smaller ships argued through their channels. Some insisted it was only one ship and could not matter against thousands. Others whispered the darker truth that humans did not fight like other species. Where others valued safety, humans valued resolve. Where others measured battles by numbers, humans measured them by endurance. The stories echoed in every mind. Stories of human ships fighting with hulls broken, engines burning, and still refusing to retreat. Stories of captains who stayed at their posts until the very end, never surrendering. Even if the details were exaggerated, the spirit behind them was real. The aliens knew it. That was why the fear grew so quickly. The human ship did not move closer. It simply held its position, shields glowing faintly, weapons armed. The stillness made it worse. To the aliens, it looked less like hesitation and more like a silent judgment. It was as if the humans were daring the entire armada to make the first move. Inside the alien fleet, cracks began to show. A squadron of smaller vessels shifted formation without orders, their captains unwilling to hold the front line. Some crews sent private messages to their commanders, asking if retreat might be wiser. The words were cautious, but the meaning was clear. Confidence was slipping away. On the flagship, the commander tried to rally his officers. "We are united," he declared. "They are alone. Do not let superstition guide you. Do not let shadows rule your thoughts. This ship is only metal, engines, and weapons, like any other." But the second officer answered quietly. "With respect, Commander, it is not only metal. It is human. That changes everything." The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. No one argued. They all knew what he meant. The science officer pulled up another set of records. She displayed past encounters with human warships of this class. Again and again, alien fleets had suffered losses far beyond reason. Ships had vanished in battles that should have been simple. Commanders had spoken of tactics they could not predict, maneuvers no computer had calculated. And always, there was the human will. Relentless. Tireless. Unyielding. The commander studied the reports, his pride faltering. He wanted to dismiss them, to call them exaggerations. Yet the evidence was too consistent. Different species, different regions, different times, yet the same result. Facing humans was never ordinary. The bridge crew waited for his response. They could see the weight in his shoulders. He finally spoke, his voice low. "Then we must be ready. Fear will not save us. Only order will." But outside the flagship, the Armada was already changing. Messages spread faster than orders could contain them. Rumors turned to certainty in the minds of crews. By the time official commands reached them, the fear was already rooted. The human ship remained silent. No broadcast came from it, no threat, no demand. And still the panic grew. The unknown was more frightening than any weapon. Across the coalition fleet, captains looked at their screens and saw not a single warship, but a shadow of every story they had ever heard. To them, it was not one vessel. It was the symbol of a species that refused to bow. And as that truth sank deeper, the alien Armada felt its unity strain. The recognition had taken hold. The alien Armada stretched like a wall of steel across the void. Thousands of ships waited in formation, each built with the best technology of its species. Their engines burned quietly, ready to surge forward at a command. Their weapons glowed, primed to fire at the first sign of battle. From a distance, the fleet looked unstoppable. Yet inside those ships, silence grew heavier with every moment. Crews sat at their stations, staring at screens that showed the same unsettling sight. The human warship floated calmly at the edge of the system. It did not move closer. It did not speak. It simply waited. The waiting itself became unbearable. In the alien mind, silence was not peace. Silence was a warning. The humans were not rushing forward, nor were they retreating. They were watching. And that quiet, patient presence began to feel more dangerous than an open attack. On the bridge of a mid-sized destroyer, a young officer shifted nervously. He looked at his captain and whispered, "Why are they not attacking? Why do they only wait?" The captain had no answer. He forced himself to stay calm, but his claws tapped against the console without him noticing. His mind searched for explanations, but none were comforting. The rumors spread faster than orders. Some crews whispered that the humans were calling for reinforcements and that soon more ships would appear. Others insisted the humans never needed reinforcements, that even a single ship was enough to break entire fleets. Each story passed from one crew member to another, growing stronger as fear added color to every detail. On the flagship, the commander tried to cut through the whispers. He sent messages across the Armada, demanding discipline. His voice boomed through comm channels, telling every ship to remember their strength. "We are the Armada," he declared. "They are alone. Numbers will decide this." But his words could not erase the stories that lived in alien memory. Every officer had heard them. Every soldier had listened late at night to tales of humans who fought when no hope remained. The details were different across cultures, but the pattern was always the same. Humans did not surrender. Humans did not retreat. They endured until their enemies broke first. On a cruiser near the front, a group of engineers exchanged quiet words. One said that humans had been seen sealing their own wounds with fire so they could keep fighting. Another swore that human pilots once flew damaged ships into battle with half their hull missing. None of them had ever witnessed these acts themselves, but belief was stronger than proof. Fear needed no evidence. The spark of fear grew brighter. Formations that had once been sharp began to loosen. Captains ordered small adjustments, claiming they were tactical, but in truth, they wanted distance from the human vessel. A few ships drifted out of position, trying to hide behind larger vessels. The changes were small, but across thousands of ships, the cracks in unity began to show. On the bridge of the flagship, the commander noticed the shifts. His chest tightened as he realized what was happening. The human warship had not fired a single shot, yet it was already striking at the heart of his armada. Not through weapons, but through fear. The science officer studied the human vessel carefully. "They know exactly what they are doing," she said softly. "They know we are watching them. They know we are afraid." The commander glared at the screen. "Then they use fear as a weapon." She nodded. "Perhaps their greatest weapon." Across the fleet, arguments broke out over comms. Some captains demanded an immediate attack before the fear grew worse. Others refused, claiming it was exactly what the humans wanted. A few suggested retreating to a safer distance to study the situation. No agreement came. Orders were issued, but half-heartedly. Doubt poisoned every decision. The human warship still did not move. Its patience was unnatural, its silence louder than any broadcast. To the aliens, it felt like the ship could see through them, as if the humans knew every thought racing through their minds. On a small scout vessel, a pilot whispered, "They wait because they know we will break ourselves." His words, though quiet, spoke the truth many already felt. The commander of the Armada clenched his fists. He knew his fleet was powerful, but power meant little when courage faltered. He had studied human tactics before, but now he understood something the records had never explained. Humans did not always need to fight with guns. Sometimes, they fought with nothing more than presence and patience. The first spark of fear had been lit. It spread through the fleet faster than fire through dry grass. Ships that once moved as one now hesitated. Crews that once trusted their strength now doubted. And all of it came from a single human warship, silent and watchful, waiting for the perfect moment to let fear do its work. The battle had not begun, yet the Armada was already changing. The humans had not fired, yet they had already struck. And the spark of fear would only grow. The human warship remained still, a dark shape against the stars. It was only one vessel, yet its presence felt heavier than the entire alien armada. Its shields glowed faintly, its weapons were active, and its silence pressed upon every crew that watched. Inside the alien fleet, questions began to grow louder. Why was the human ship not attacking? Why did it wait as if time itself was its ally? The uncertainty spread like a shadow, crawling from one ship to another. On a frigate near the front, the captain tried to keep his crew calm. "They are just one ship," he said firmly. "We are thousands. Remember our numbers." But even as he spoke, his crew avoided looking at the main screen. Their hands moved slower, their voices uncertain. They had all heard the same stories. Numbers did not always matter when humans were involved. The coalition was built on logic and planning. Every alien fleet within it relied on rules, calculations, and strict discipline. Their strategies worked against most enemies. But humans were different. They did not always follow logic. They did not always obey patterns. That unpredictability unsettled the coalition more than weapons ever could. On the flagship, the commander felt this truth pressing on him. He had seen the records. He had read the reports. But now, watching the single warship stand so calmly, he understood what the reports had failed to capture. Humans carried something invisible yet powerful. It was not only technology or weapons. It was a way of fighting, a way of existing, that unsettled everything around them. The science officer spoke in a quiet voice. "Commander, it is their patience that troubles us. We expect enemies to act quickly, to reveal intentions. Humans do not. They force us to wait, and in waiting, our thoughts betray us." Her words were true. The Armada was not built to handle silence. In silence, doubts grew. In silence, the mind imagined dangers that were not there. The human ship used that silence like a blade. Across the coalition channels, arguments erupted. Some captains insisted on attacking now, believing that hesitation only gave the humans power. Others refused, saying the warship was clearly waiting for them to make the first mistake. The commanders could not agree, and the lack of unity was clear to every soldier and pilot. On a smaller cruiser, a navigator whispered to her friend, "They are watching us. They do not even need to fight. They wait for us to destroy our own courage." The friend nodded but said nothing more. No one wanted to admit how true it sounded. The human ship finally moved. Only a little. Its broadside shifted, and its weapons adjusted position. That was all. No shots were fired. No words were spoken. Yet the motion carried the weight of a declaration. The warship was ready. The effect was instant. Across the fleet, voices rose in panic. A few ships pulled back without orders, their captains unwilling to face what might come next. Formations weakened as gaps appeared. The once perfect wall of steel was no longer flawless. On the flagship, the commander slammed his fist against the console. "Hold position," he ordered. "Do not break formation." But his voice, though loud, could not command the fear already spreading. The second officer spoke softly beside him. "This is the human factor, Commander. This is what our numbers cannot match. They fight with their will, and their will spreads into us, breaking us before weapons fire." The commander wanted to deny it, but he could not. He saw it with his own eyes. One human warship, without a single shot, was unraveling the courage of thousands. On another vessel, a communications officer muttered, "What if more are hidden? What if this is only the first?" His words were repeated on channels across the fleet. Soon, ships were scanning wildly, searching for invisible threats. Every false signal became proof of hidden reinforcements. The fear built higher with each passing second. The human ship held its position. Its engines glowed faintly, steady and strong. To the aliens, it looked like an anchor, unmoved and unshaken, while their own fleet trembled with uncertainty. The science officer turned once more to the commander. They do not need to outnumber us. They need only to remind us who they are. And we already know. The commander stared at the silent warship on the screen. He had led fleets across many battles. He had fought enemies with stronger weapons, faster engines, even greater numbers. Yet never before had his armada felt so fragile. Never before had his unity cracked so quickly. The human factor could not be measured by sensors. It could not be calculated by strategy. It was something unseen yet deeply felt. It was the reason stories of human defiance filled the archives of every species. And now the commander understood the truth of those stories. The human ship had already begun the battle. Not with missiles, not with lasers, but with silence, patience, and will. The human factor was at work. The coalition armada had been formed to look unshakable. Each ship was placed with precision, each squadron linked by careful planning. From a distance, the fleet looked like a wall of shining steel, impossible to breach. But now, as the human warship floated in silence, the wall began to crumble from within. Small changes came first. A frigate at the edge of formation drifted backward. Its captain gave an excuse about engine calibration, but his crew knew the truth. He wanted space between his ship and the human vessel. Not long after, a destroyer repositioned, claiming it was for tactical advantage. In reality, the captain simply felt safer when hidden behind a larger ship. The commander of the flagship saw these changes on his screen. His claws gripped the armrests of his chair. "Hold formation," he ordered again, his voice sharp. "The enemy has not fired a single shot. You disgrace yourselves with this disorder." But his words could not erase the fear growing inside the armada. The cracks were spreading faster than discipline could repair them. The human ship had moved only once, turning its broadside as if readying its weapons. That single motion had been enough to shake the courage of thousands. On one of the coalition's heavy cruisers, an officer leaned close to his captain. "If they attack, we will be the first to take the hit. Why should we hold this position?" The captain frowned, but he could not deny the question. His hands hesitated as he considered what orders to give. On another ship, a squadron leader argued with his commander. "We should retreat to a safer distance. They want us to rush forward. If we fall back, we can regroup." The commander shouted him down, but the hesitation remained in every pilot's mind. The coalition was beginning to argue with itself. Orders and counter-orders flew across channels. Some captains demanded a full charge. Others insisted on caution. A few, quietly and secretly, told their crews to prepare escape routes. The unity that once gave the armada strength was breaking apart. Meanwhile, the human warship remained calm. It did not chase, it did not taunt, it did not even speak. Its silence was more powerful than words. To the coalition, it seemed like the humans were waiting for them to make the mistake, and that thought ate away at their courage. On the flagship, the second officer studied the patterns of movement across the armada. "Look at them, Commander," he said. "Formations weaken. Discipline slips. Already they fight one another with words instead of fighting the true enemy." The commander's chest tightened. He knew his officer was right. The cracks were no longer small, they were visible everywhere. The once perfect lines of the fleet now looked jagged, uncertain, as if the armada itself doubted its purpose. On a patrol ship near the front, a young pilot spoke softly into his comm. "They are only one ship, but they are not afraid. Why are we, with thousands, so afraid of one?" His words were heard by his wingmate, who answered in a whisper, because they are human. And humans never fear the way we do. The thought spread. Crews across the fleet asked the same question. Why did a single human ship feel heavier than an entire fleet? Why did silence press harder than weapons? The answers were unclear, but the fear was undeniable. The human ship shifted again, this time only by a few degrees. Its engines glowed slightly brighter, its shields shone more clearly. Once again, it did not fire. Yet the Armada reacted as if a storm had been unleashed. Several ships pulled back at once, claiming they were repositioning. Others began scanning wildly for hidden human reinforcements. Every false signal was treated as proof of an invisible fleet waiting nearby. On the flagship, the science officer lowered her eyes. It is not their weapons that break us, she said. It is what they represent. We are afraid not of what they do, but of what we believe they might do. The commander's fists tightened. He had spent years preparing for this campaign, uniting species who had once fought each other, building an armada larger than any the galaxy had seen. And now, one human warship was tearing that unity apart without a shot. He rose from his chair and spoke to his crew with determination. We will not break. The fleet will obey. Prepare the forward wings for attack. His voice was strong, but even he felt the weight of doubt inside his chest. Across the Armada, however, captains hesitated. Some ignored the order. Some delayed, hoping others would move first. The fleet was no longer one. It was 1,000 ships, each pulled in a different direction by fear. The cracks were no longer hidden. They were wide and deep, spreading faster with each heartbeat. The Armada that once seemed unstoppable was already collapsing under its own uncertainty. And through it all, the human warship watched, silent and patient, as if it knew exactly what was happening. The cracks had become the first signs of collapse. The human warship shifted slowly, almost imperceptibly. Its broadside glowed brighter, and its shields pulsed like a heartbeat in the silent void. It did not fire, it did not signal, and yet the effect on the alien armada was immediate. The cracks that had begun in the fleet now widened into full fractures. On the flagship, the commander slammed his fists against the console. His voice thundered across channels. Maintain position. Attack now. Do not let fear decide our actions. But the words fell into empty space. Across the fleet, the crews hesitated. Doubt had already spread, faster than any order could travel. Small groups of alien ships began to break formation. One squadron pulled back, claiming it needed to repair engines. Another adjusted its path, insisting it was repositioning. Yet the truth was clear to the commanders, their crews no longer trusted themselves, nor each other. Panic was growing like a wave rolling through the Armada. On a heavy cruiser near the center, an officer spoke quietly to his captain. We cannot hold them here. Even with thousands of ships, our crews are losing control. They fear the human. That fear will destroy the formation. The captain's claws tightened on the console. He tried to calm the crew, tried to restore order, but the tension in every station was palpable. The human warship did not need to fire. Its presence alone was enough. Each motion, each subtle shift, reminded the Armada of stories told for generations, stories of humans who had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. The legends were real. They were not exaggerated tales. They were warnings, etched into the memory of every species. On smaller ships, whispers spread across comms. They are waiting for us to fail. We cannot predict them. Why are we so afraid of one ship? Each message, though quiet, added weight to the growing panic. Some crews began preparing escape protocols secretly, hoping to survive whatever might come next. The cracks widened further. Formations that had been tight and orderly were now loose and uncertain. Pilots hesitated at maneuvers they would normally execute without thought. Commanders shouted orders, but hesitation slowed responses. Even the fastest engines could not move fast enough to hide the fear that had settled like a shadow over the fleet. The human warship moved slightly forward. Not to attack, but to adjust its position. That simple shift was enough. Across the Armada, tension became action. Several ships reversed engines, pulling back without instruction. Some vessels broke formation completely, drifting alone, as if distance could protect them from the unseen threat. The flagship's commander felt his heart race. He had faced countless enemies before, but never one like this. The human ship was not powerful only in strength, it was powerful in presence. It had already won a battle before a single weapon was fired. The second officer leaned close. "Commander, it is the will of the humans. Their patience, their confidence. That is breaking them before we even fight." The commander nodded grimly. He understood the truth. Numbers, weapons, technology, none of it mattered if courage faltered first. The human ship had turned fear into a weapon, and the Armada was falling to it. On a nearby cruiser, a pilot whispered to his wingmate, "We were supposed to be the strongest fleet in the galaxy. How can one ship make us tremble?" The wingmate did not answer. He could only watch the ships around them scatter, unsure and panicked. From the edges of the Armada, entire squadrons broke and fled. The once united fleet became a cloud of ships moving in different directions, no longer a single force. Attempts to regroup failed as fear spread faster than orders. The human ship had achieved what no enemy had in generations. On the flagship, the commander shouted again, trying to restore order. He realized, even as he spoke, that the battle had already been lost. Not to weapons, not to fire, but to fear itself. The human had struck without lifting a finger, and now the Armada was collapsing under its own doubt. The human warship observed silently, shields glowing, weapons ready but unused. It did not celebrate, it did not gloat. It waited, steady and calm, as the enemy fleet unraveled. The collapse was complete. Ships that had once stood as a symbol of power and unity were now scattered, disorganized, and fearful. Their own minds had betrayed them. The human ship had not fired a single shot, yet victory had been claimed. The commander of the flagship realized the truth. Across the galaxy, the stories were correct. Humans did not need to fight in the ways others expected. Their greatest power was patience, courage, and presence. They could change the outcome of a battle with silence alone. The human warship remained at the edge of the system. Its engines glowed faintly, its shields pulsed steadily, and its calm gaze swept across the fleeing Armada. It had not needed to fight, and yet it had already won. The collapse of the alien fleet was total. And the human factor had proven itself again. The alien Armada scattered across the void, their formations shattered and discipline broken. Ships that had once moved as one now drifted alone, some reversing engines, others turning back toward safer space. Panic had replaced confidence, and the human warship had caused it without firing a single shot. The flagship's commander stared at the empty spaces on his screen. His fleet, once a symbol of strength, was now a cloud of vessels fleeing from fear. He clenched his claws and ground his teeth. How could one human ship accomplish this? How could it make thousands tremble while doing nothing? On smaller ships, crews whispered among themselves. "We lost without a battle," one said. "They did not even attack," another added. Each voice carried shock, disbelief, and respect for the human that had caused it. Across species, the message was the same. Humans were not just clever fighters, they were legends walking in the flesh. The human warship moved slowly, drifting past the remnants of the Armada. Its shields glimmered, its weapons were silent, and its engines left a faint trail of light in the darkness. To the aliens, it seemed almost alive, a presence that weighed more than any fleet could. Its calm confidence was terrifying. It did not need to chase or fight. It had already won. On the human ship, the crew worked quietly. Their commander stood on the bridge, observing the retreating enemy. There was no joy in their victory. They had done nothing more than show themselves, yet the effect was undeniable. The legends of humanity had been proven true again. The second officer turned to the commander. "They will remember this," she said. "Every species that faced us today will tell the story. Our presence alone broke their fleet." The commander nodded. "We do not need to celebrate. History will do it for us. We simply exist, and the galaxy remembers." Among the fleeing alien ships, confusion was widespread. Captains argued over comms, blaming one another for failure. Some claimed their squadrons had misread signals. Others insisted that the human must have hidden reinforcements. None could explain why a single vessel had undone so many plans. The truth was simple, but impossible for them to admit: humanity had no equal in courage and presence. The flagship of the Armada turned slowly toward home. Its commander knew he could not continue the mission. The human factor had proven itself beyond doubt. One ship, patient and calm, had caused an entire fleet to collapse. He would have to report defeat. He would have to admit that humans were unlike any enemy he had faced. The story of this day would spread across star systems. Every species in the coalition would pass along the tale. One human ship had faced thousands of enemy vessels and changed the outcome without firing a shot. That story would grow into legend, as all human stories did. Meanwhile, the human warship continued its slow patrol along the edge of the system. It had not pursued the fleeing enemies. There was no need. Its mission was not to destroy, but to remind the galaxy that humans existed, and that they were fearless. The message was clear: humans could not be underestimated. On the bridge, the human commander spoke softly. "We are stronger than they believe. Not because of our weapons, but because of our resolve." The crew nodded. They had trained for battles where courage mattered more than numbers. They had faced impossible situations before and survived. They understood that fear could be a weapon, and today, they had used it without violence. As the human warship left the system, its presence continued to echo in the minds of every alien commander. Every fleet member remembered the calm glint of its shields, the precision of its engines, and the quiet patience it displayed. They would tell stories of this day for generations. They would remember how one human ship had broken thousands of enemies by simply existing. Back on the human ship, the crew prepared for their next mission. They did not celebrate. They did not gloat. For them, this was just another step along the frontier. Yet behind their calm faces, the galaxy had already begun to change. Every species that had witnessed the human warship now understood a simple truth: humans were not just another race. Humans were determined, fearless, and unforgettable. The legend of humanity had grown once more. Across star systems, it would ripple like a wave, inspiring allies and unnerving enemies. The galaxy had seen what a single human could do, and it would not forget. The human warship glided silently into the darkness, its mission complete. It had not fired a shot, yet the Armada had collapsed. It had not chased, yet the enemy would retreat in fear for years to come. Its presence alone was enough to remind all that humans were different. And that difference would continue to shape the galaxy, one quiet victory at a time. Humanity's shadow had been cast, and nothing would ever forget it.